opinion, insight. AM 1380. The Answer.
The information you obtain from this show is not, nor is it intended to be, legal advice. You should consult an attorney for advice regarding your individual situation. We invite you to contact us and welcome your calls, letters, and emails. Contacting us does not create an attorney-client relationship. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Saturday HOA Brunch, presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. Please sit back, relax, and join Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick for an hour of entertaining information about HOAs and HOA law.
Well, welcome back to the Saturday HOA Brunch, 9:07 in studio. Brad Epstein, Viana Barbu. That's the Saturday HOA Brunch. Translation, homeowners associations, community associations. Brad, Viana, are you excited about another Saturday?
Very excited, Jonathan. How about you, Viana?
I'm excited. Good morning, everyone.
I'm all jacked up on like Dutch Brothers. I had a double stacked, triple shot 9/11 torture or something, whatever it's called.
KTKZ The Answer. And you can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. It's the Saturday HOA Brunch.
And that show, this show right here, our show, is about community association law.
Yes. What have been some of the topics? What was your favorite topic so far? In 21 weeks, I'm putting you on the spot.
IDR.
IDR,
What's
Internal
IDR?
Dispute Resolution. Yeah, with reserve studies, banking, modern media, 60-minute board meetings, insurance, elections. We just cover it all, right? There's just a wealth of knowledge that you can gain from the Saturday HOA Brunch. And we're excited today because,
Yay.
Why are we excited?
Fantastic. Yes, we have a guest tonight.
Today? Not tonight, but today, and he is Mr. Morgan Fussell. How are you today, Morgan?
Doing great, Jonathan. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, you sound excited to be here. So why don't you just go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? We are greatly in appreciation for your sponsorship of the show, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about your service?
I certainly will, Jonathan. A long cable television background. Spent 25 years in the cable television industry, working for the two major providers. And back in 2007, the federal government got involved and ended exclusive access provisions.
Right.
So this is important, as you know, Brad, to
Yeah.
open up competition.
Yes.
And I realized there was a niche out there that HOAs needed some help negotiating these cable TV access and marketing agreements, and decided to create my own company about 7 years ago to help guide through the process, all the minutia of these cable contracts.
Real helpful to associations. What's the name of your company?
Broadband Agreements by MFC. It's a division of Morgan Fussell Consulting, Inc.
You know, it was funny, Morgan, when I spoke with you at a luncheon, I go, Morgan, you really have a niche in the industry. And then I said, well, what's the competition you like, for you out there? And you said, Jonathan, I have no competition.
Yeah, it's funny.
Great
It's
company.
A lot of the folks won't leave the cushy jobs at the cable companies. So virtually my competition is the cable companies themselves.
Interesting. Yeah. So what the luncheon you mentioned? You guys always go to the luncheons. What luncheons are we talking about?
It was
Let's give a shout out to CAI.
Yeah, Community Associations Institute luncheon.
And what are these luncheons?
Right across the street. I can see it out the window from our beautiful studio here at AM 1380 over at the Hilton off of Harvard Way.
Right. We have listeners throughout California, Bay Area. We're going to have a Bay Area board member calling in, and so there are these Community Association Institute luncheons all over. If you're board members, you want to learn about the ins and outs and have some really great speakers. There's luncheons in the Bay Area, down south, all over.
Nationwide.
California. It is nationwide. It's actually international now. And so, hey, Viana, what are we going to talk about today in addition to broadband agreements?
So today we're talking with Morgan about broadband agreements, but also in general about vendor contracts, what to do, what not to do, what to look for. So helping associations enter into good, solid vendor contracts.
Right. So the two subjects are really going to dovetail. Morgan Fussell with broadband agreements is going to talk to us today exactly about what his company does and why it's so helpful to associations, and we're going to interweave the law about and tips about vendor contracts. Then later on today we're going to have my favorite part of the show again, and that is going to be
Battle of the Board Members.
Battle of the Board Members.
It's going to be an all-out brawl like the two ladies in Walmart just recently, right?
Lyle and Jay are going to join us. Lyle and Jay, two Great people. I can't wait. It's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, and we've even got our good friend from Foster City, Wally, is going to call in,
fantastic.
right? With a president's perspective, 34 years.
34 years as a board, and he's a great speaker. We really enjoyed him. He's going to give information from us time to time from the Bay Area.
The good, the bad, and the ugly experiences with vendors. He has a ton of experience.
Real helpful from that point of view, right? Not from an attorney point of view, but from an experienced board member's point of view. Okay, so let's get into broadband agreements, right?
Right. So, Morgan, what I've been wondering is what gives your company the advantage in negotiating with cable and internet providers? I mean, I know you've worked for the providers, but what else gives you the advantage?
Well, yes, absolutely correct. Having the 22 plus years working for the providers has allowed me to work with legal counsel on the cable side, and then to understand, hey, where can we bend on these agreements? How can we, what's acceptable? What are the starters and non-starters in these agreements? Any boilerplate agreement from a cable company is going to be favoring them, as you all know. There's about 8 or 10 items that must be changed in those agreements that I've come to find out through the years before I would ever recommend a board signing. So that's really worked out well. Just the advantage of working both sides.
Yeah, and so I think the idea is that you save associations money. You make the agreements that associations have with to get their it's internet, right, is this broadband accessibility. You help associations, and I think a lot of associations give this short shrift. I think it's something that they don't really think about, and you're brought to the forefront, and I can't even hazard to guess how much money you've saved associations. Really, really helpful. And it's because of your experience.
Have you kept a number, Morgan, yourself? Do you know? Can you throw something out there like, well, I've saved associations over $8 million? And
it's in the millions.
It's in the millions. Excellent. So how do you structure your agreements, Morgan? What are you looking for? What are the different components, and what are some things that just jump out at you when you say, oh, you know what, I can help this association, and this is time for Morgan Fussell to step in and make a difference?
Well, what happens is, the relationships that I've fostered through these years, I'm in my 7th year here locally on my own, and what happens is when these agreements come in, as you all know, they can only be 5 years in California, and they're renewing very, very often. And when these agreements come to the manager's desks, if they know about me, hey, let's call Morgan. And what's happening is they're getting that boilerplate agreement. They're sometimes getting an offer on compensation, and basically I'm going to take that agreement and improve. Even though I'm not an attorney, I don't create my own language. I just use language that was used before, and certainly will recommend their attorney blessing when I'm all done.
Right, and it doesn't cost that much for an attorney to look at the agreement, and that's one thing that you always talk about. You say, look, I'm here to help you, board of directors, with these agreements. You do not have any problem with the association's attorney looking at the agreement also, and it doesn't take that much. These agreements are not in reinventing the wheel with respect to the different provisions, which we are going to go over the different ones, aspects, indemnity, right, insurance, arbitration clauses. We're going to talk about all that for our listeners so that they can get a good idea, in addition to just broadband agreements, but vendor agreements in general. So you help with respect to all that, and you make sure that it's right down the middle, nothing crazy in their agreements. Plus, you negotiate for them, right?
Absolutely. There's a different ways we can either save or increase income for the associations. Probably 20% of the associations have what they call as a bulk agreement out there. Oftentimes we can save money there, renegotiate with different providers. Since the exclusive access clause, since that was lifted.
What do you mean by that? Can you give us a little more detail?
Yes. In 2007, I mentioned a little bit earlier, the federal government came in and ended these monopolistic exclusive access provisions. So any provider can come into the association and provide service. Of course, it's advised to have an agreement with that
competition,
provider.
Right?
Yeah, competition's important, and there's no reason not to have competition.
What about them contacting you? How can they reach you, Morgan?
My email is morgan@broadbandagreements.com, or my phone number is 916-939-5026.
Fantastic. And your geographic scope, how far a reach will you go?
I'm a nationwide company, but I'm based out of California. My primary business is in the state of California.
Okay, so Bay Area folks, because folks listen to us from the Bay Area as well.
Yeah, very busy in the Bay Area, extremely busy in the Bay Area.
So, Morgan, one thing I know associations are usually worried about is easements. Easements created by a contract where they may have to share the obligation or share their territory, their common area or anything like that with a vendor, perhaps with a contractor. So, are there easements created by the contracts usually, and whom do they favor?
Part of that boilerplate agreement, they want an easement. When they want an addendum, the cable companies often want that easement, and I like to strike the easement if I can. Right away. I do not want any part of that easement. I may give them an easement for a common area building, possibly, and their equipment. Their equipment in the common area, yeah, but we're never going to encumber a parcel. And I just like to remove the easement completely if we can.
So owners don't have to be worried about some cable company coming in and setting up shop on their parcel.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, the cable companies have a big investment, and they need their equipment protected in the common area.
Yeah, as far as the legal terms, so when an easement is, and people get kind of confused about this is when you grant someone, a third party, someone other than the owner, some interest in your property. And so this easement is for the cable companies to have the ability to go in and take care of their hardware, right?
Exactly right.
And that's interesting. So you're taking this American free rights approach with respect to trying to minimize the easements. Interesting. I like that. Yeah, we're going to want to get your point of view with respect to arbitration clauses and all the other clauses. That'll be great to hear your perspective on that. The American viewpoint. I love it. And so, as far as the agreement, so there's also looks like we're going to break, huh, Jonathan?
Yeah, we're going to go to commercial break, and I'm excited to announce that our experienced board member and president is going to give us his president's perspective. Mr. Wally Rick from
fantastic.
Foster City is going to join us on air, and he's going to give us a little bit of the good, bad, and ugly of experiences he's had with some vendors. So
when we come back
from the break, we look forward to talking more with Morgan Fussell and Wally Rick.
Stick with us.
Discover how business and ministry work effectively together to make a difference in the community. Join FCM International for our 11th annual Business and Ministry Conference. This year's conference is a complete game changer. Learn from top business leaders from around the globe, including Casey Treat, Chris Johnson from Shark Tank, Phil Muncie, and many more as they share their knowledge and expertise. Join FCM International July 7th through the 10th by visiting fcmievents.com. That's fcmievents.com. See you there.
Come celebrate 50 years of ministry, founded on Scripture and focused on the cross. On June 14th, St. Mark's Lutheran Church of Citrus Heights will present morning worship at 8 and 10:30 and a special service at 4 p.m., followed by a wonderful feast. Celebrate the future by remembering our past with St. Mark's Lutheran Church, 7869 Kingswood Drive in Citrus Heights off Sunrise Boulevard between Madison and Greenback. Go to stmarkslutheran.com or call 961-7891, 961-7891.
If your community association has a good relationship with their current management company, you can stop listening. However, if you are struggling with your current service provider, we'd love to talk with you to see if Omni Community Management would be a good fit. Transparency, education, communication, and trust are just 4 of the qualities that set Omni apart. This is Rolf Crocker, CEO of Omni. Call us at 916-965-8964. That's 916-965-8964. Online at omni-mgt.com. That's omni-mgt.com. Omni Community Management, your friend in the community association management industry for over 20 years.
Have you ever heard of the saying, a person's home is their castle? Of course you have. But sometimes a construction defect can turn your castle into a catastrophe. If this happens to you, you need proper and professional representation. You need Angius&Terry, LLP. For over 30 years, the attorneys at Angius&Terry have been effectively serving homeowners and community associations, recovering more than $500 million on behalf of their clients. Angius&Terry strives to ensure that your construction defect claims are prosecuted in an aggressive and cost-effective manner. Angius&Terry will also continue to work with homeowners and community associations after the construction defect claims are concluded to make sure that the money received from builders is spent wisely and that your interests are protected during the repair process. Don't let a construction defect turn your castle into a catastrophe. Call Angius&Terry LLP today at 916-567-1400. That's 916-567-1400. Online at angius-terry.com. Angius&Terry LLP.
AM 1380, The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch presented by Angius&Terry LLP. And now your hosts Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick on AM 1380, The Answer.
Hey, we're back for the second quarter of the show. Frank Jolly's giving me the finger, the one that says start, not that I'm number one. But it was interesting during the break. Morgan was just showing us his great website. Morgan, you have a website if people want to maybe investigate a little bit about what broadband agreements provides. And go ahead, Morgan. What's that website that they can visit?
Yeah, for the listeners out there, broadbandagreements.com. That's broadbandagreements.com. For those who are listening, you can follow along or look at your leisure.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. And I am excited, as is Viana and yourself, Brad. We have Mr. Wally Rick on the line. It looks like we're
honored.
We're honored. Okay. Well, it looks like we're gonna try to reconnect with Wally. So until then, let's just go ahead and start a little bit of the discussion regarding vendor contracts.
Yeah, so we were wondering, Morgan, about addendums to broadband agreements. What are they and how do they affect the association and owners? You mentioned earlier that there's some addendums you come across quite often.
There's a couple addendums to we have the services agreement, the access agreement is our main agreement, and then the addendums to that, one of them we touched on was the easement. Another couple addendums we touched a little bit on is a bulk addendum. About 20% of the associations still go ahead with bulk agreements, and bulk agreements, you can save money on bulk agreements. The other addendum would be a compensation agreement, and they both are service partner to the services agreement.
Excellent. We'll get back into vendors and contracts, but hey, Mr. Wally, how are you doing out in Foster City today?
I'm doing great. Is this Jonathan?
It is. Wally, how's it going, my friend?
Jonathan, my friend, very well. We got a little fog here. It's cooled off a little bit here on the bay. I'm sure you're still experiencing a little heat on the other side, but we got a little relief today. So.
Oh, boy. I envy the fact that you have a little bit of cloud cover, and I'm sure it's just a beautiful day in Foster City, and we are so happy that you could join us for our first edition of President's Perspective.
Thank you. I'm honored to be on and to share whatever I can, Jonathan.
Absolutely, because as is our goal, along with the organization, which I would like for you to tell us about here in a little bit, is you like to educate and see this industry progress so that it's beneficial for all homeowners associations.
That's correct, Jonathan. About 3 years ago, we formed an organization here in Foster City called United HOA that encompasses 26 of the 32 HOAs associations in Foster City. And what we were wanting to accomplish with that organization was sharing ideas such as vendors, such as getting information to the city staff so we could actually become more of a power play, if you will, of being encompassed not by one HOA, but by now 26 that are represented. And what we've accomplished, if we fast forward 2.5 years later, we've seen a direct, I would have to say, balance, and not only balance, but the associations and board presidents and board members and committee members that are able to be in that association were able to share information with their HOAs to get, i.e., vendor selections in a more favorable way, that they didn't have to necessarily go out there, Jonathan, and reinvent the wheel. We were able to put different companies together by what we did was we put a spreadsheet together, and each board member was able to list their different vendors, such as painting contractors, such as asphalt contractors, such as contractors that did repair replacement for siding, roofing contractors. And what we did was we had each person rate them on a scale of 1 to 10, and what we did from that scale was we were able to incorporate something that made other associations more favorable in selecting contractors.
It's excellent. I really like the fact that it sounds like the organization that you're involved in has kind of put together a power rankings list,
real clout
of reputable contractors and vendors that this company, they have experience working with associations, and they are going to make sure that they fulfill the board of directors and the members of the community's expectations. That's the primary goal, correct?
That is correct. And what we've also been able to do is bring in the city, too. We brought in the director of community development, director of public works, and what we've been able to do, too, is piggyback some of their contractors, too, i.e. asphalt projects. When they're doing asphalt streets in Foster City, we would try to get their schedule and then incorporate with them the companies that they're using to do that, to see if we can piggyback along that same line. And we've seen a cost savings on the asphalt side to about 10 to 15% reduction because of that piggyback.
Wow, real money saving.
Money savings is correct. So, yeah, but that has been the goal, is to really not... And also have companies. As we know, it's important to have those, it's kind of like we've done the reference work already, getting contractors, qualifying contractors, and we know contractors need to be qualified in many different ways. That's a key thing that I think some boards maybe do not understand as far as the qualifications in selecting vendors.
Now, Wally, with your experience, and I'm sure that I can't even count the times on my fingers and toes, how many times that your board has directly interviewed a set of contractors for a certain project, what are some qualifications or what are maybe some fine points that you look for in finding the quality contractor that you want to make sure they take care of the project for your association?
Yeah, well, thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, I would say over the last 5 years, we've had, I want to say 6 or 7 different projects. And over that time, we've actually interviewed and reviewed different vendors, such as contractors for siding, roofing, landscape companies, management companies. And I think one of the things, and that's such a good point, of interviewing is to really to do your due diligence on that. I think some of the things we look for to determine the different evaluations is the vendors over in the services they offer. Some of the vendors' experience in working with associations, you'll find you have to really identify them as to single-dwelling homeowners or to HOAs. So a lot of times people will select somebody in a single residential instead of an HOA. And what we looked at and what we've done is, I think one of the key things is we've checked the Better Business Bureau in referencing Community Association of
CAI.
Great way of getting references and finding. Getting references with other HOAs to find the different scope of work, asking references and finding out asking the contractors their schedules of contractors. There's so many key things in doing that when doing references, because a lot of times you select a contractor, a lot of times based on emotion or sometimes based on price, and that
or relationship, unfortunately, correct?
Exactly. And what we try to do is build and the way we build that relationship, particularly if you don't know a contractor, if you're going into it blind sometimes, and let's say you're a property manager, a lot of boards rely, Jonathan, on the management companies to select the contractors.
That is correct.
And why is that? You hire a management company in a lot of ways because they have that expertise, because they can bring that to the table. Again, board of directors are volunteers. And now some board of directors are fortunate where if you're looking for a legal thing for lawyers, you may have a lawyer on your board. You may have a contractor that serves on your board. They can reach out and give you some good information.
Absolutely. Wally, it's been a pleasure. I'd like to introduce your organization to another great vendor. If there's any cable right of entry, contract negotiations, or services needed, please just feel free to look up Morgan Fussell. We've got to go to break here now.
And And we just want to thank you so much. And we've turned a lot of people onto your show, and they love your show on Saturdays here in the peninsula, by the way.
You know what, Wally? I am going to talk with you, I'm sure, later in the week. We're going to get something lined up again. It's always a pleasure to hear from you. The wealth of knowledge is priceless that you can provide. So I wish you a great weekend, my friend.
Thank you, Jonathan. You too, my friend.
Have fun, Wally.
Okay, thanks, and stay cool.
Yeah, you too. So, okay. Hey, that's Mr. Wally Rick. Wally Rick is slick. He's in this organization, United Homeowners Association. We are going to go to break. When we come back from break, we are going to talk more with a qualified vendor in the industry, Morgan Fussell. We are going to play Battle of the Board Members, and we are going to hopefully take some more phone calls. Right, Bianna?
That's right.
2 little tablets is all it takes to make your thin hair feel and look thicker and fuller. Guaranteed. Viviscal is the #1 drug-free hair growth supplement in the U.S., with 1 box being sold every minute globally. It's clinically researched to promote existing hair growth for men and women. And now a 90-day supply of Viviscal is offered in your area risk-free plus free shipping. Call 800-884-1759. Viviscal nourishes thinning hair from within. You'll love your hair growth results, guaranteed. Viviscal is so effective, it's recommended by top doctors. Here's Dr. Grant Stevens, board-certified plastic surgeon.
I feel confident recommending Viviscal to women with hair loss, thinning hair, or even dry or brittle hair. It's 100% drug-free, and it's backed by years of clinical research.
Want to try Viviscal? Every listener that calls now gets a 90-day risk-free supply plus free shipping. Call now, 800-884-1759. 800-884-1759. That's 800-884-1759.
Having trouble understanding your community association's reserve study? Does your HOA's reserve study seem to be written in a strange language? Hi, I'm Robert Browning, owner of the Browning Reserve Group. At the Browning Reserve Group, we have been providing easy-to-understand reserve studies since 1999. We actually listen to our communities and help them plan for the future. Find us online at browningrg.com. That's browningrg.com, or toll free at 877-708-0600. That's 877-708-0600. Clarity from complexity. The Browning Reserve Group.
AM 1380, The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. And now your hosts, Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick on AM 1380, The Answer.
We are back in studio for the third quarter. Once again, Frank Jolly gives us the signal. It's time for us to shine and hopefully educate you regarding community associations. We just had a great discussion with Mr. Wally Rick, right, Morgan?
We sure did, and I tell you, we can segue right into our next little discussion here regarding auditing agreements. It's really important for associations to know, hey, what agreements do we have with the vendors, with the cable TV vendors? Do we have one with AT&T Verse? Do we have one with Comcast? Where are they set? When do they expire? How much compensation do we have? When can we renegotiate? And that's why I want to let everybody know that I'll be happy to do audits, for no charge. The board president or any board member can sign my letter of authorization, and that lets me go and audit your agreements for you.
Excellent piece of information there. What do you got, Bianna? What do you got?
Well, I was wondering, Morgan, what are the typical guidelines and qualifications for the agreements you negotiate? Like, what are you looking for? What are you looking at? What can you offer?
Yeah, the providers generally we're looking at to help the associations the best. We're looking at a unit count of 75 units or more, attached condos, townhomes. If you're single-family dwellings, we like to see the roads. The roads are private roads, gated communities, because it gets back to those easements. If they're in the public right-of-way, there's really no, they can be in the public right-of-way. It's when they're on private property. We're protecting private property rights within the associations. That's the key.
Okay, Morgan, so you're saying townhomes, lofts, high-rises, single-family home developments, PUDs, all of the above. They can qualify, they can fit into your generalized scope for potential clients. And is there any way that they can figure out how we can get out of an agreement and renegotiate a new agreement? Or what's the basis for when someone's qualified to reach out to you for your services?
They certainly can reach out at any time. Again, it's really important to know where you're at in that agreement. Is there agreement even there? So I do audits. I find no agreement or old or expired agreements. If there is an agreement in place, was there compensation? Is there marketing language? What type of marketing language? Is there no marketing? Is there co-marketing? Is there exclusive marketing? So really, Jonathan, it depends on the agreement and what it says, and it's really important because with open competition now, the FCC upheld two key items in their ruling in 2007. They upheld bulk. They allowed associations to do bulk, and they allowed associations to do exclusive marketing agreements.
So, Morgan, what does that mean, bulk agreements? What does that refer to?
A bulk agreement is simply where an association will negotiate a bulk price, a reduced fee, perhaps on video and or internet for their association. The fee might be retailing for $72 out there in the marketplace, and then the association may negotiate a half off, 50% reduction. But then again, the association pays for all members, regardless of use.
Let's look at this then, Viana. What are some of the do's and don'ts when you're going to make an agreement like with a vendor such as broadband agreements? Viana, you have a checklist of some important things that you should take into account when you're going to reach an agreement on a contract. What are those?
Right. So I want Morgan's input on these too, as I discuss them, because I'm sure he comes across some of these do's and don'ts, and associations are either doing it or not doing it right. So one of the do's is always use a written contract. I think Morgan will agree with me that oral contracts just don't work out very well. Nobody ever remembers what the terms were. It violates the statute of frauds. Not a good idea. Always require insurance and proof of insurance. I think that's important for any association. Always specify the independent contractor status of the vendor.
And where can they check that, Viana? Where can you check a contractor status? On the California State Licensed Contractors Board, correct?
Right. Yeah, the California State State Contractors License Board.
They've got some acronym for it, but you go online, type in California Licensed Contractors Board, one of those. I got to reference it. I'm still a little foggy in the head from a late Friday evening, but anyways, you can check the license status. They're going to tell you if they've had any issues with their license. They're going to make sure that they're insured. They're going to make sure the association's going to want to make sure that they have the proper insurance for the type of work that they're going to actually
and that's mostly for actual construction type contractors.
Absolutely.
Always review the scope of work and always confirm that they have a current license, and most importantly, never ignore contract deadlines. Morgan, what are your thoughts on these?
Yes. One of the advantages of auditing these agreements is to find out, hey, when do we need to send that letter of non-renewal? It's going to do nothing but increase our position when we renegotiate. There's those auto renewal clauses that we always see, and so it's really important to get that letter of non-renewal out. And you touched on, Viana, insurance, and a lot of the HOA attorneys have guided the associations properly here, in the fact that in our cable agreements, we make sure that the association is named as an additional insured. It's really important, and that the mutual indemnity is there, and it's really, really important.
That's great. So you mentioned the notice of non-renewal. So what is that? That's not too common, I think, in some contracts, but in your contracts, you see it all the time. So what is that about?
Well, at the end of the day, associations they want as many providers as they can have for choice, in the common area within the association. But with the compensation involved in these agreements, it's important to improve your position and let the cable companies know that, hey, look, we want to send you a letter of non-renewal. We want to renegotiate our terms.
Right. So there are certain terms that associations should look out for in vendor contracts as well. So this is the buyer beware terms. So either vague or inadequate scope of work, tight payment deadlines, automatic renewal provisions for service contracts, which we talked about with Morgan. He just explained, limitation of liability clauses, indemnification clauses, manufacturer's warranty language, and any kind of mandatory arbitration agreement, which Brad and I were discussing earlier, and some companies prefer to have them in there, and some just want to go straight to court. So, Brad, what was your take on that?
I think it should be a point counterpoint, in our show. So it's...
You want to throw it back to point counterpoint? A segment on Saturday Night Live before I was even born, probably, right? When was that?
Exactly. Saturday Night Live, 1978. Well, You have arbitration clauses in some contracts. What do they do? An arbitration clause provides that for a dispute between the parties in the contract, they will be resolved out of court through arbitration. Root word, arbitrary. And so what these provide is, instead of having a dispute resolved through a court of law with a trial, perhaps a jury, and then the right to appeal to the Court of Appeals, instead it will be resolved through a private judge who's not with the court, outside the court system. And so you don't have that American right. You're contracting away for the American right for arbitration. But on the you want to say that the plus side, Viana, right? The expense and time.
The plus side of an arbitration agreement would be that it's a lot more time efficient, cost efficient. I mean, you can schedule an arbitration within a few days of when you decide that you want to go to arbitration, rather than the 2-3 years before you actually get to trial. So
yeah,
that's very
underline
helpful.
that, right?
Right.
Because our court system is pretty crowded. The dockets are pretty full. And the criminal cases get priority over civil cases. What does that mean? Civil cases, those are the cases that have to do with everything but prosecution by the district attorney. So those cases get, the criminal cases get priority over the civil cases. It takes a long time for the cases to go to trial. Plus what happens is you hurry up and get ready for court trials, right? So you need to be ready when the court says you have to be ready, and then when you are ready, the court says they're not ready, and they kick it down the road. And so
they kick it down the road another 2-3 months.
Exactly. So it can get very expensive. So when you have business relationships through a contract, sometimes I have to admit it does make sense for there to be a contractual provision that provides for arbitration. That is, a neutral third party will render a decision binding on the disputing parties. This is in contrast to mediation. Anyone want to talk about how mediation differs from arbitration?
Yeah, so in mediation, it's kind of a negotiation process where the decision, you might not even come to a consensus. There might not be a decision at the end, and it's not going to be binding on the parties. So you may have an agreement at the end of the mediation, or you may not. You just get to hash out the issues and discuss them. You also have a neutral third party, like a judge, but it's not
right. In the instance with mediation, the mediator just attempts to compel, cajole, convince the parties to reach a resolution rather than rendering a decision. Jonathan?
Well, what's the one with arbitration? Rent a judge? No, go ahead.
Yeah, that's it exactly. So with arbitration, it's a neutral third party that will render a decision binding on the parties and no right of appeal. Morgan, we did not talk about this before. We're here with Morgan Fussell with broadband agreements. What's your view on this? What do you like? I mean, personally, aside from the law, arbitration agreements, you're okay with those in certain instances?
I think so. Arbitration, that's one thing about the cable contracts in California. There's not many disputes. Everybody wants the cable. People want choice. But it's really important to have that written contract, and the arbitration clauses are perfect. That's exactly what you want to have. And
business disputes and it cheapen, but yeah, you really haven't seen disputes, have you?
You just don't see disputes.
It doesn't make a lot of sense for there to be a dispute with respect to that. And then when your company is right there involved with the contract, then it reduces the chance that there's going to be a disagreement, because you're in there making sure that there's no goofy provisions in the contract. The attorney may review it for 1 or 2 hours, right? You
Absolutely.
said, it doesn't need to be some real expensive review by an attorney of a contract. And let me just say in general, for all you board members out there, it really makes sense for the attorney to review contracts. You enter into, say, a $1 million contract for residing, painting, what have you. Let that attorney look at that contract for a couple $100. It really makes sense. It's going to save you in the event there's a dispute. And when the difference between a broadband agreement and, say, a contract with a contractor is there could be a defect in the construction of the work by the contractor. In a construction project for siding, painting, what have you, you want to be protected. You don't want to have any goofy terms such as limitations of liability. We're going to get into that in a second. Limitations on statute of limitations, right, Jonathan?
Absolutely. Well, Morgan, why don't you real quick, before we go to break, go ahead, give us that website again for broadband agreements, and then also the number that they can reach you.
Sure, broadbandagreements.com. My website's broadbandagreements.com. My email is morgan@broadbandagreements.com, or feel free to call me at 916-939-5026.
And then we'll talk about you audit. Did we talk about that yet? How are you going to audit? In just a second, when we come back from break, don't go away. Morgan Fussell with us today. Broadband Agreements is going to talk about auditing the agreements that associations have for broadband.
Fourth quarter, coming right back at you.
Don't go away.
Hi, this is Rick Russo, owner of Russo Insurance Agency and Financial Services. We proudly serve Granite Bay, Roseville, Rockland, Sacramento, Lake Tahoe, and the surrounding areas. At Russo Insurance Agency, we like to say, get to know us before you need us. Our insurance agency is built on relationships and trust. If you want to be certain that your most valuable assets are insured correctly, allow us to give you more than just a 15-minute quote. For all your commercial, home, auto, and life insurance needs, call us today at 916-791-1901. That's 916-791-1901, or online at rickrussoinsurance.com. That's rickrussoinsurance.com. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Morgan Fussell. My company, Broadband Agreements, negotiates cable television and broadband right of entry, access, and compensation agreements for your communities. At Broadband Agreements, we offer a free review of all agreements with a signed letter of authorization. Broadband Agreements will improve your community's income and/or savings, or you don't pay us a dime. Visit us at broadbandagreements.com. That's broadbandagreements.com. Or call me, Morgan Fussell, directly at 916-939-5026. That's 916-939-5026. Broadband Agreements online at broadbandagreements.com or 916-939-5026.
Did you see the story about the Homeowners Association? I wonder what their residents think.
I don't know, but I love my condominium association. The place looks great and is well managed, and our property values are increasing.
Well, that's a good thing.
Community Associations Institute, CAI, has helped us build a great community. They have tools for safeguarding our investment, including education for our board and professional training for our manager. Just visit CAI at responsiblecommunities.com.
Okay, responsiblecommunities.com.
The challenges presented by today's economy and rebounding housing market is forcing many homeowners association boards of directors to operate their HOAs more like a business. It's a balancing act of trying to stay solvent and still provide homeowners with quality amenities and services. One of the main challenges HOA boards are facing is attempting to recover unpaid HOA fees owed by delinquent homeowners. Collection efforts are often very time-consuming. If you want to get the HOA fees collection monkey off of your back, call ATC Assessment Collection Group. ATC is an attorney-supervised collection company, providing collection and foreclosure services to HOAs in both California and Nevada's most recognizable communities. Get back to what you actually volunteered to do as an HOA board member. Effectively oversee your community. Call ATC today at 916-641-1410. That's 916-641-1410. Online at atcacg.com. That's atcacg.com. ATC Assessment Collection Group.
This is AM 1380. The Answer.
You're listening to the Saturday HOA Brunch presented by Angius&Terry, LLP. And now your hosts, Brad Epstein and Jonathan Broderick on AM 1380, The Answer.
We're back, fourth quarter of the show. A good show with Morgan Fussell from Broadband Agreements.
Morgan Fussell.
You know, I just got off the phone with the two board members for Battle of the Board Members this week. Did you know that they said it's so warm outside, they hung up their phones, they're outside shooting each other with super soakers. They said they were going to handle it on their own because they knew it was going to be warm out today. So we'll get back to Battle of the Board Members next week, but Morgan was discussing audits, and then he had this great story. I wish we would have just left the mics on during the break, about an association that you just recently are working on a project with?
Yes, Jonathan.
Yeah, tell me more.
Yeah,
or tell me again.
It's exciting times, I'll tell you. When you get the audit, when you get the letter of authorization signed by the board president, you can go to the vendors and say, "Hey, vendors, you're operating on my client's private property here, and you're offering service. Let me look at your agreement that you have with my client." lo and behold, I found that a client whose agreement was dated 2003.
You roll up your sleeves, you show them your biceps, and you say, "Hey, Xfinity, hey, AT&T, Morgan Fussell's here, and this is my client's property, so I'm going to let you know how we are going to do business."
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's here's this association sat there for how many years without compensation. The agreement was up in 2008, so here's ancillary income that they've missed. They've missed a valid agreement.
I don't want to interrupt you. When you say compensation, can you briefly give us a little explanation on what that means for the association and the board of directors?
As a general 20,000 foot level, yes. I mean, depending on the association, depending on the competition, every community has its own fingerprint, but oftentimes there's compensation involved in forms of revenue sharing or upfront door fee money. That's pretty common in the industry. Those offers do come in at times, and basically my phone rings when that happens, and I increase offers, or I'm not paid. That's how I work. I'm zero risk there. And these audits, there's no charge with a signed LOA. You really need to know where those agreements sit. And you could find no agreement in place. You could find an old or an expired agreement. You can find an agreement in place with no compensation at all.
Yeah, did you hear that? So you charge how much to do this audit of the association's broadband agreements?
Actually, the fee is normally $250, but I waive that fee with a signed letter of authorization. They just put me to work, and they sign my letter of authorization, and I waive that fee. So there's no charge.
Oh, it's a benefit to all parties. Yeah, I see what you're saying. So excellent. As part and parcel that we're talking about also, the fact that if an association has someone coming on the property and providing the broadband services, yet they don't have an agreement in place that's expired, it's not just that they're not getting revenue, but also that the association is exposed to liability. You don't have the indemnification clause, right, Viana?
Right. No indemnification clause. You don't know what the terms of the agreement are because the previous terms have expired. You have no idea who's liable for what. You're just kind of flying in the wind out there.
Indemnification clauses. So think about an insurance policy. So what does an insurance company do when you have insurance policy with them? They provide coverage for third-party claims. So if someone, let's say you have a good example. Let's use an example. So you have an agreement with a contractor and a roofer, and so the roofer's up there hammering away with their hammer, and then you got a homeowner that comes out to yell at the contractor because they're too noisy, and then the roofer accidentally drops a hammer right on the head of the homeowner. Ow. Okay, so now who's that homeowner going to sue, right? So you got the contractor on the roof at the association. You have the homeowner walking over to it and yelling at the contractor. That never happens. And then the hammer drops on the head of the homeowner by the contractor, and that homeowner's going to sue the association, right, Fiona?
I'd say sue everybody, but yeah, the association is probably who they're going to go after because
litigious society. We have litigious society. And so what you need to have in place is an agreement, a clause in your contractor agreement that provides that in the case of a third-party claim against the association, that the contractor is going to go ahead and they're going to cover the association for that claim, indemnification. So, as Morgan was saying, if you don't have an agreement in place with respect to the company that's coming on your property, taking care of their broadband hardware, and someone gets hurt, then the company can say, hey, we don't have to cover you. There's no contract in place.
Well, what about insurance? I was just curious about that, Morgan. Is that are insurance provisions common in your contracts, or do associations require that the cable companies have insurance for these types of situations?
Yes, absolutely. We make sure that the liability is at least $1 million or more, because this is private property we're on. We're not in a public utility easement. Now, the cable companies do have a state franchise, so they do have bond, $4 million in excess bond set up, with for the PUC, for operating in the PUC. But this is entirely separate. So yeah, it's very important to have at least $1 million of liability coverage.
Sure. Yeah. So let's bring those two concepts together. So you have an indemnification provision in the contract that provides that the broadband company is going to go ahead and indemnify the association for any third-party claims. And in order for that broadband company to actually support and provide for the real coverage, they have an insurance policy that's going to pay for the indemnification in that agreement. Oh, that reminds me of limitation of liability clauses. Is one of my favorite subjects. Oh my gosh! So nowadays there are architects, landscape architects, and they usually have these provisions in their agreements that provide that they will not cover the association above a certain amount. It's usually just the amount of the contract itself, and it is basically a trap for the unwary, because landscape architects, or any other contractor, their liability, of course, could be above the amount of the contract or some arbitrary amount of money. Liability limitation clauses, look out for those. You want to make sure if indeed you are going to enter into a contract, you either don't have those provisions or at least you know about them and you can negotiate them a certain way. Association boards, they have a fiduciary duty to make decisions in the best interest of all the homeowners. That means that they have to make some business decisions, right, Jonathan?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, we're just winding up our episode, I think it's 21. Did you have a good time, Morgan?
Oh, fantastic time.
Excellent. Well, we really appreciate your sponsorship of the show. We appreciate the hard work put in by Frank Jolly today. Brad, once again, excellent legal information.
Broadband agreements, Morgan Fussell, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Morgan, for being with us.
It was great to be here.
Thank you, Wally.
Yeah, Wally out in Foster City. Have a great day, bud, and enjoy that fog. I'm going to be sweating bullets up here in Sacramento.
And Jay and Lyle, we will get you on the show later. We really appreciate you. We wanted to get you on today.
Have fun with the super.
We'll get you on later.
And before we go, I want to give a shout out to someone special. Happy birthday to me. That's what happens when they give me a microphone.
Happy birthday, Viana.
Thank you. I'm celebrating 29 all over again.
Yeah, this is the 5th year I think you said you were doing that.
Well, never mind.